Good morning. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining this next session. It's on sustainable material, and it's about how best we can use sustainable materials when we're building our homes. I've got the pleasure of having Emmanuel Stefanakis and also Imran Rahman. If you please can introduce yourselves for the audience. Emmanuel, would you like to start?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for this invitation. It's great to present on this very important topic. Our company is based in New York State, but I personally am based in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the United States. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer and one of the founding team members at Ecostone Housing. And I'll get into the presentation on the company in a second, but my whole career has been focused on sustainable economic development and devoted to applying ecological principles to planning, design, and construction. Design with nature philosophy, if you will, as was coined by my university mentor many, many years ago. So I've applied this method and principles to hundreds of projects around the world, including just under 1 million housing units in various countries. Also, just as a little bit of background, I'm also the designer and builder of the first LEED Platinum homes in Massachusetts and the 12th in the entire United States, which has provided me with enormous practical, experiential knowledge on green building. And but getting into the topic of the day, we founded this company not so many years ago in order to address the major barriers for building housing, but especially affordable housing. And there are 3 key factors that we've identified, and which actually it was memorialized after we began our company by a study published by McKinsey. And that is technology, systems, and finance. Today, I'm going to focus on the technology, and I'd be happy to address the other 2 topics at some later point.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's an introduction. I'm happy to just go on.
I'll let Imran also, I can tell you're very excited for us to get into it, which is fantastic. But if Imran can also introduce himself, please.
Yeah, I think on the matter of this topic, I share Emmanuel's enthusiasm, especially so about sustainable materials. So my name is Imran. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at GUSH. And GUSH is basically an advanced materials company, and what we've dedicated ourselves to as a business, as a company, as an organization, is really to focus on what can better your living spaces. So the company was founded on the basis of personal problems, which is has to do with something called indoor air pollution, which not many people know about. And the main cause of this is actually something called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And so obsessively, what the company has done is we've researched and innovated on that basis on, trying to identify how to remove this problem and making that indoor environment safer for everybody, especially considering we spend 90% of our time indoors. And on that basis, we actually innovated our first and flagship product currently, which is a paint, which purifies the air. And our product basically, when painted in your home, removes these VOCs. And at the same time, it's antibacterial. There's no odor, it removes odors, and at the same time, it also removes chances of mold and things like that. So we've really sort of come into this problem with an all-in-one solution. And looking at that from a more macro perspective, we do realize that actually there's more relevance in terms of sustainable technologies and green technologies and technologies that can do more for you, which is why we've looked inside the company and invested a lot more in R&D to develop new verticals of products along the lines of thermal solutions and whatnot, which I'm not going to get into today because we're not speaking about products. But essentially, what we're looking at is really how to make your buildings, your home, your environment, your office, your hotels, whatever it is, more sustainable, more green, more friendly to the people who are going to stay in them. Hence, our motto of bettering living spaces. Yeah.
Excellent. So I think that's a fantastic introduction, and I'm sure everybody's going to get prepared for the wealth of information that the two of you are going to provide. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to just give a bit of information. So there's activities falling under the title of shelter, the category, specifically within the building sector, account for some 40% of overall energy use and associated greenhouse gas emissions, and a majority due to material resource and use. So this is the reason why this particular session is really important. So on that basis, sustainable construction should be the rule and not the exception, something that government and housing or building associations, etc., really take on board. So within this session, it's going to be really exciting for us to really delve deep into looking at what sustainable resources actually are, identifying them, because sometimes it's a heavy word. People are not too sure what sustainable materials are. They think it's something out of reach. And then for us to look at practical ways in which people can use sustainable items or equipment to be able to technology their homes or their buildings. So I'm going to get started with you, Emmanuel, because I know you have a presentation for us that you'd like to go through. You've done a few projects in Panama and also Nigeria as well. And you're also getting ready to do a project here in Ghana, which is exciting. So I'm going to hand over to you so that you'd be able to take everybody through what EcoStone does and how you've been able to apply that into the building sector.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we focus on three aspects: the technology and a paradigm shift, bringing the technology into the 21st century, and moving through various housing systems, a way to accelerate the speed of construction, the velocity of construction, because not only to meet the dire demands, but also to address the cost of money. And if we can build homes in 14 days, as you'll see in a moment, as compared to 14 months or 6 months, it's extremely important in meeting this deficit. I'd like to show you a very brief film, 2 days, which highlights our technology, and then I'll get into the specifics of it. So enjoy the ride for a moment. This is our first project in Nigeria.
Emmanuel, does it have sound? We don't seem to be able to hear anything.
Oh, there is sound. Well, it's music and not a narrative, but I'll happy to narrate. This is a demonstration project we did in Nigeria. It was demonstrating that we could build a home in 14 days using our technology. It's focused primarily on an advanced form of concrete called CLC, cellular lightweight concrete, and the application of that concrete in this advanced forming system that is designed and manufactured in Germany. You'll see the machine there, the yellow machine, which produces on-site, in situ, cellular lightweight concrete. This concrete is sand, cement, and a foaming agent in addition to water. Can you hear me now? You still hear me?
Hello, Emmanuel.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi. I think I just lost you for a second.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me, I'll jump this forward a bit. Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You dropped
We
off.
seem to be having a little bit of a technology issue here. Anyway, the application of this technology is we've used it. As I said, we're a young company. We've done a project in Panama and in Nigeria. This is a brief overview of what we completed in Badagry, Lagos State, about a year ago. It is the first Edge Advanced certified project in Nigeria, and if I recall correctly, it was only the third Edge Advanced project in all of Africa, which resulted in about 53% energy savings, 42% water savings, and 35% less embodied carbon by applying our technology and systems. A quick overview on our Panama project, which we achieved. This was our first project ever. It was a 32% energy savings, 35% water savings, and 58% embodied carbon. This is an interesting one because this is phase one, where we had applied our technology to an existing architectural plan. But in phase two, we've adjusted the design to make it more efficient, actually smaller, but more spacious. And we've achieved over 50% energy savings at the same time that we've reduced cost. So this is the secret to our technology. It's a portable in situ concrete factory, about the size of a large SUV. It mixes cement with sand and foaming agent to produce cellular lightweight concrete. And that is poured into formwork. It can be poured at different densities and therefore have extraordinary superior properties to traditional concrete while providing substantial strength. We apply this primarily to single and double story structures at the moment. The cellular lightweight concrete is about half the density of traditional concrete. And by injecting a foaming agent into the concrete, there are millions of air bubbles which provide insulation and a very good comfort for individuals. In Panama, we've actually measured the temperature difference between inside and outside to be over 10 degrees Celsius. But equally importantly is the sustainability, embodied carbon. And as you'll see in the graph, these two graphs, our building system is the upper graph, which just intrinsically reduces the carbon footprint by about 40%. And this is done through the way production of concrete is made. That's the darkest blue area that you see. But we also, because we produce on-site and on demand, we have far less waste. We don't have heavy machinery, trucking going back and forth across the city. And we also reduce the carbon intense materials of coarse aggregate. And in terms of EDGE, these are the ways that we apply the EDGE algorithm to our buildings to increase energy savings, water savings, and embodied carbon. That's a brief overview. I'm happy to address any more questions or dive more deeply into any of these topics. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We do have one question. So I'd just like to say to our participants that if you have any questions, please feel free to post it. And rather than waiting till the very end, I might ask them throughout our session. So I have one question here, which is from Michael Rada. Is asking how many of the properties have tenants already? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily know. Are you the property developer and also the person that rents out the properties as well, or how does it work for you?
As a young company, we started off by being the developers and contractors, which is what we did in Panama and Lagos. We currently have shifted our business model now that we've proved the concept to being a technology solutions provider. In this way, we work with local contractors and developers, and we can have an exponentially larger impact on the supply of housing in different countries. So the project in Panama is fully occupied, and the project in Lagos is about a third occupied, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check the number, but still in the process of being sold. These are units available for sale, not for rent. Having said that,
I
yes.
think you should tell them how much that the properties in Lagos go for, the cost of it.
Well, the cost, of course, is dependent on so many factors, right? Cost of land, the cost of local materials and labor. We use all local labor. We bring in trainers, but shift the responsibility to local skilled and unskilled laborers. In Lagos, the home that you saw in the presentation is about 64 square meters, 2-bedroom unit, and the sale price is about $25,000. The home in Panama, different economy, different government, different geography. Those homes sell for somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000, and they're about the same size.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, Imran, do you have a presentation for us as well? Or should I dive straight into the questions?
Let's dive straight into the questions. I don't have a presentation.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'd like us to explore like different examples of sustainable materials, as I said, because a lot of the time people think they're far removed from what actual sustainable materials are, but especially within this climate that we live in, it's right underneath our noses. So could we actually look at the different types of sustainable materials there are that we could actually use within our building projects? Imran, I'll go for you.
Well, for us as a building materials sort of supplier or innovator, there's a variety of materials that we can consider. But how we like to break it down at GUSH is into 3 aspects. So we have materials with primary impact towards sustainability, secondary impact, and of course the tertiary impact. So primary impact being at point of manufacturing, like how does this ensure that our sustainable goals are met? So let me give you an example. In the way that we manufacture our paints, we have been very cautious not to apply things like heat or excessive mining of raw materials that might otherwise be pollutive versus traditional paints, which require heat and hence have a larger carbon footprint. GUSH's manufacturing technique, at least for our paints, involves pulverization technique, which is just basically like grinding the raw materials into very fine particles and then going through a mixing process. So in that's the primary impact that we assess, because that's the impact of us to produce that material. I will not get into the secondary impact, but in terms of the tertiary impact, it's at point of application. And for us, we do believe that sometimes less is more, because a core part of sustainability is about demand and supply. And one thing that's been happening is that in terms of the whole like commercial conversation and in terms of driving towards economic growth, we're always talking about consumption and increasing demand and increasing sales. At GUSH, we believe less is more, which is why we believe we wanted to put all our technological finesse into one singular product that can do more for you, which is why our paint was developed as a 6-in-1 solution. And with that in mind, you can think of things like preventive maintenance, because in Accra, for example, you guys are near the coast. I imagine molding to be a huge problem. In places like, anywhere near the coast, basically humidity is a bit higher. If you're near a rainforest, you're going to have those issues come up. And what we do on that tertiary level is to really prevent mold from growing, so you don't have to consume new materials to sort of fix that problem. So that would be the tertiary impact. So we really want to look at this from a whole chain point of view. Yeah.
Imran, you've got ahead of us just a little bit. I have to rein the two of you.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah,
that's okay. So the question is, what are sustainable materials? Like, what are they? So let's start with that, so that people can actually identify with what they are within their local environment, and then we'll get to the part of how you can apply it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But just off the top, like, what is, like, because I know, for example, bamboo is a sustainable product, right? So what other materials are sustainable materials that we would probably come across on a day-to-day basis that we can take advantage of?
Okay, yeah. So bamboo is definitely one of them. And I think another thing that's not been spoken about so much is actually like algae and kelp. there are so many applications moving beyond food for like kelp, for example, because there are many companies like researching the basis of how they can utilize like kelp or algae for like energy, for
What
food
material are you
sources.
mentioning? Kelp.
Kelp or algae.
Oh,
Yeah,
algae.
so I think in terms of like sustainable materials, one of the core components that we should look at is how long does it take to grow? Because when we talk about materials, most of them are going to be natural resources that we either like mine or have to harvest. Maybe let me just draw a parallel here. For example, we use trees to make things like paper and wooden finishes and whatnot. But the issue with trees, for example, is that it takes a long time to grow. And depending on what your demand context is, you might not be able to plant enough trees or regenerate that particular ecosystem in the same way that the demand is being utilized. But for things like kelp, bamboo, algae in general, they are very fast growing. And what that does in terms of like sustainability in the grand scheme of things is allows you to sort of regenerate that ecosystem while you're consuming. So that really helps. And I mean, moving beyond that, there are so many examples of sustainable materials, but I think these are the main two, algae and bamboo, that I would like to talk about just for that basis, because it gives you a good perspective of what we should be looking at, not just about what we should not take away from our environment, but how we can sort of preserve that process of the ecosystem and how we can make sure that no further damage is being done for us to urbanize, if you will.
Excellent.
I would add slightly more. Bamboo certainly is and can be a sustainable building material. However, one needs to look at the supply chain and how that bamboo is grown and where it's sourced and what the materials used are to convert it into a value-added product like flooring. Are the adhesives, for example, do they contain volatile organic compounds? Has the bamboo been sourced from what was a mature growth forest that was cleared in order to grow the bamboo? So there are subtleties that one needs to look at when talking about sustainable building materials, not just a superficial look.
Excellent, excellent. So I have a question here, which is we all okay. So would like sorry, let me just get the name from Victor. He's asking, what are the materials that are fed to your unique mixer to make your wall panels? So your concrete, your machine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's
they're all local.
What are
yeah, they're primarily locally sourced materials. Cement is available in virtually all countries. Sand, virtually available in virtually all countries. Water, a scarce resource, as we've heard in the earlier panels, but water. What is unique, perhaps, is the foaming agent, which is an imported material, but we use a few liters per home. And it's not a large component of the material is imported. And all the labor is locally sourced, as I said earlier, skilled and unskilled.
I think this is always a challenge with doing anything virtually. Sometimes the network is not that stable. So excuse a little hiccups. Okay, I have another question. So for your machine, how will the savings look like for a single custom unit versus multiple units when you're doing a production?
Well, the machine and technology can be applied. It can be applied to all scales and all socioeconomic levels of housing. We, as a company, are focused on the affordable housing, which is low income and low middle income. In order to meet the demands, the enormous demands for housing, that's the niche that we address. It can be customized. The panel system is modular. And can be configured in different ways. But one of the things we do is we optimize the design of the homes in order to make them not only energy efficient by applying the EDGE algorithm, but also to minimize the number of components that we use so that the home can be erected quickly and at high speed and very efficiently. I'll give you an example. I showed you the home that we built in the homes we built in Panama, first phase. And because we were using another designer's home, there were a number of corners and the window sizes and all that. We adjusted the design and got larger window openings, better ventilation, better energy savings, at the same time reducing the cost, because one has to balance the cost of a window, which creates light and ventilation, with the cost of concrete. And at least in Panama, the cost of a window per square meter was less than concrete per square meter. So there's an interesting modeling that one has to do. It's not very difficult, especially with the EDGE tool, which we found to be extremely helpful.
Excellent. So, Imran, so your company is GUSH, and GUSH produces paints, if I'm correct,
Yes.
which has a mixture of sustainable materials inside it, and then you have air purifiers, etc. So, is it only applicable to like housing projects, or is it for corporate use, or is it just limited? Like, what's its total usage?
Well, in terms of what we've been used for so far, we've seen applications from across residential to industrial. And because of the properties of the paint, one of the things that we can do is actually absorb moisture content from the air and moisture content from the surrounding. One of our most unique case studies have been sort of painting around server rooms which require temperature control, especially in tropical climates like Accra, for example, or even here in Singapore. Our room temperature is 28 degrees Celsius or 26 degrees Celsius, and servers have to be kept in the colder rooms, anywhere between 8 degrees to 18 degrees, depending on what the requirements are. And what happens is that the walls on the outside of these areas start to perspire, if you will, or tear because of that condensation. So this is something that we have uniquely formulated ourselves to sort of address head on, because we can absorb that water. So in terms of the applications, really, on our end, what we feel is important for us to educate, to empower, and let people know the capabilities of what we can do in terms of our product, and in terms of our mission and how we're going to change the landscape using better building materials. So the applications are really limitless. We have painted everything from one single room in a baby's house, for example, in a baby's room, all the way down to whole factories and whole warehouses, and even full buildings at a time, whether it's being newly built or refurbished. Yeah, I think that's also the versatility behind paint, because you need it in most projects. Yeah.
And your paint, is it a base paint, or is it an actual decorative paint as well?
It can be used as both, actually. So we have had projects where we have been the base coat, but most of the projects encompass us as the full solution. So we do the base and we do the finishing or decorative. Yeah, if you will. And
what did you say are the sustainable materials that you are inside the paint, which actually help?
So in the case of GUSH, we use a plant-based component that actually comes from a form of seaweed that is highly absorptive. So this material is actually called diatomite, and this is one of the core ingredients of the paint. It works the same way as activated carbon or some of the other more porous materials that you experience in nature. But the difference between the process and how we process the diatomite is that this material is readily available, it's easily sourced, and the processing does not require too much effort in the grand scheme of things relative to how paints are manufactured. And this is actually the layer that allows for us to absorb that moisture and keep your walls dry, if you will, to prevent some more more difficult issues to solve, we will, like for example, like mold, because mold needs moisture. And the basis of that absorption also actually helps us to not just absorb the volatile organic compounds, but we also, in that basis or in that formulation, we do have proprietary catalysts that we utilize as well, that break down these materials and keep it clean so that you don't have that sort of saturation in your walls just from absorbing this toxic materials or this moisture, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to compliment you on bringing product like that to the market. I know when I was designing my first LEED Platinum home 14 years ago, there was a desert of appropriate building materials. And it's important to note that the supply chain bringing innovative products like Imran is talking about is really important, not only in terms of the variety of projects which help us build green and healthy and sustainably, but also the cost of materials has come down substantially over the last decade or so. Yeah. So building green is not necessarily expensive, and as Edge will tell you, they expect to get to certify a home with as Edge. It's less than 2%, and we've found in our projects that it's less than 1% additional cost to get the home certified.
Yeah,
excellent.
And I actually like to comment on what Emmanuel just said, because one of the key challenges that we are facing as a sustainable or green-facing company who's pushing for this agenda is that most people think it has to be extremely expensive and the cost basis does not make sense. And it's been, very difficult to navigate some of those conversations, because at the end of the day, we do understand that businesses have to put profits first, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, we cannot forget that home is planet Earth, and we should do our best and really have that responsibility and accountability towards what we do for the environment. And on that basis, what Emmanuel is doing with his company and the technologies that he brings to the table with low-cost housing, with sustainable and green at the same time, it's such a beautiful thing to see.
Okay, I honestly think the organizers should have allowed us to have our own event, right?
Yeah, let's get back to the agenda.
And you guys are giving us so much information, so I want to go through some of the questions because they're really piling up. So the first question that we have from Victor Kojo is, have you, so I think this will be for actually both of you, have you got any contact to policymakers in Ghana to solve a housing deficit in Ghana? Now, Emmanuel, I know you said that you're coming to Ghana now to work on the projects. Could you elaborate a bit on that and what the process has been like?
Yeah, my colleagues and I have been to Ghana a number of times, and we are actually building a model demonstration home currently as we speak, that will be announced shortly. We have had some preliminary conversations with policymakers and have gotten a very favorable response from not only them, but also developers who are in the affordable housing market. It's been a very warm reception, I must say, and we look forward to being more active there.
So just a quick question. So your sustainable materials, is it that it can only be used for affordable housing, but can it also be used for commercial projects as well?
Oh yes, wherever you use traditional concrete, we can apply our technology. It's just that that's the niche that our business is focused on.
Okay, interesting. And then for you, Imran, is GUSH available in Ghana? Is it on the continent at all?
We are actually in talks right now with several partners within Ghana to bring our paints and some of our other newer products into the market. But that being said, in terms of if you're talking about networking within Africa itself, we do have several touch points that we have been speaking to, and we're still working on it right now. So we don't have anything as concrete, if you will, but there's strong interest in the market, especially given some of the recent changes in policy making and what the goals are within Africa over the next 10, 15 years. So we do see a lot of potential in the market, and we are actively working on it right now.
And that would be interesting because you could also, because of the sustainable materials that you're using, you could actually have a production plant here on the continent, as opposed to, importing it in from Singapore. You could actually eventually get to the point of producing it here locally. which again would
Yes.
keep the cost low for the end user. Okay, excellent. So the next question is from Emma Banson. Hello, Emmanuel. So this is for you. How can a private builder incorporate sustainable materials in his or her building? It's actually Reverend Emma Banson.
Well, I would, one needs to do a little bit of research. And I think the easiest way is to look at the Edge app that's available free from the IFC. And it guides you through the process of looking at materials and processes in order to build sustainably and ultimately get your project certified as sustainable. So that's a good start. Applying these sustainable building materials is not difficult. It just requires some thinking. As I said, in Panama, we actually, by looking at the design, looking at the specifications of the products we were using, we were actually able to reduce the cost of construction. So there are advantages. It's not a time sink. It's actually advantageous, not just for the design, but for the developer, the cost of construction, and ultimately for the occupants of the homes. We found that by applying this Edge algorithm, the occupants of the building save in excess of 1/3 of their monthly utility bills, which in turn creates a discount on their mortgage, or gives them more disposable income to spend on their children's education or health or whatever factors. So there's a cost benefit to owners as well, a significant one.
Okay, excellent. And then we've got Victor, who's got another question for you, Emmanuel. He may potentially become your client very soon. Have you explored the use of recycled plastics as a raw material? I know we were going to have Nelson Boateng, who does recycled plastic bricks, but I guess in his absence, he can also respond to that question.
There are two parts to that question. The formwork that you see where we pour our concrete is a recyclable plastic. It's manufactured in Europe. Those forms can be used tens, if not hundreds of times, depending on how well they're handled. And at the end of their life cycle, they are recyclable. They're lightweight, which also makes our construction methods, let's say, gender neutral, we like to say. They're lightweight and can be handled by women as well as men on the construction sites. We had a number of women helping us on site in Nigeria, for example. We are exploring ways to further reduce the carbon footprint of our concrete, including the application of recycled plastics, but we're not quite there yet. We expect, we are just now establishing a sustainable building technology center as part of our in-house research and development initiative, where we'll be exploring the application of that and other technologies to further reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, excellent. So I've got Kweku Owusu, who's got a question. In a short to medium term strategy of closing our housing deficit, what is the viability of using sustainable building materials in relation to its availability, especially in Ghana, okay, so, and Africa as a whole? So, you know, it's a very interesting question, Kweku, and I think it feeds back to my initial question of us elaborating a bit more on what exactly is sustainable materials, because it's about, do we have it available? Like, is it readily available outside of bamboo? And how can it respond to the en masse of properties or developments that we actually need to build? I think that becomes the other challenge. I'm not sure, Emmanuel or Imran, if you know about that, or Imran, if there's a case study in Singapore, whereas you know your supply actually was able to meet the demand, and if it didn't, what was put in place in order to respond to that?
I don't think we faced much problems in terms of supply chain for sustainable materials, because these things have been available for a long time and they are actually readily available. It's just that when we talk about the incumbents in the different industries that we're dealing with, There are certain things that they're used to, and the status quo seems comfortable, which is why innovation is not something that they look at. And especially within a space like, for example, that we're in, construction, building materials, we have, many huge incumbents who have been doing business and innovating in a manner that they have been used to for the last 50, 60 years, much longer than most of us in this call have been alive for. And having that mentality, if you will, does create a difficulty in making that shift towards doing something that's net positive in terms of when you look at it from a sustainability perspective. And this is the benefit of I guess, what we do have in terms of a smaller or a more nimble, purpose-driven entity organization like GUSH, where we focus on the impact that we want to create first, which is why sourcing for these materials are not a problem. But in terms of case studies and talking about the impact of, let's say, getting certain things done, this doesn't just have to be limited to a conversation with construction. Like the basis of like even foods, like for example, like Impossible Meats, their basis has been about like reducing that carbon impact for you to enjoy a beef patty, for example, that tastes exactly like beef, or meat substitute that tastes exactly the same, but created in a lab, created in a controlled environment, whereby not only can this carbon footprint be quantified, not only do you not have to transport it around because all it needs a lab to grow it, but on that basis, it solves other issues as well, like food shortages around the world. So this is not just something specific to what we're speaking about here today. It goes far beyond into many different industries across the world in terms of when you talk about like sustainability. Yeah.
Imran, I'm really sorry. So we only have 2 minutes left. 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So I've just
time flies.
To go. Yeah, they're pinging me saying, Nadia, 2 minutes. Okay, so I guess another question that I'll take one more question from here then. So for existing, this is from Linda Lanque Mills. She's asking, for existing developments and homes, what are some suitable materials that can be used for modification? So we've really gone and spoken a lot about the building blocks of the actual house, which we've covered clearly. And we've also spoken about, the paints that could be used to ensure that the moisture and damping and stuff are not coming through. But outside of the initial, infrastructure, what about the roofing, for example? What about flooring? What other sustainable materials can we use to build our homes or offices, churches, etc.? Because churches, for example, I mean, they're quite elaborate, they're very big. And for some churches in Ghana, we use fans in order to, high ceilings and fans to be able to, push enough oxygen or cool air around. And there's others that just stuck up ACs throughout the whole building. So what would be other options that we could use in terms of sustainable materials to be able to build our developments? We've only got like 1 minute left.
Yeah, there are many options, and I'll point again to the IFC Edge algorithm, because in the algorithm, there's a drop-down menu with numerous building material options, and you get instantaneous feedback on the carbon footprint and energy savings by applying those materials to your project. So it's a very effective real-time tool. For example, if you look at what in the drop-down menu for wall construction, there are no less than 20 different materials which are listed there, and you just choose one and you get an instantaneous readout.
And you said that's on a website?
Yeah, the IFC Edge Green Building Program. I believe they're presenting at in this conference as well.
Okay, excellent. Something to reference then. Excellent.
And just to add on to what Emmanuel. Oh yeah, just to add on to what Emmanuel was saying, because if we're talking about buildings that have already existed for a long time, we don't necessarily have to speak about rebuilding it, but retrofitting has been a very useful solution over the years in terms of ensuring that fundamental development of the building itself, in terms of structural integrity, in terms of the systems in place. And there have been many, retrofitting solutions coming out of the US, Europe, that consolidates a lot of this energy savings or water supply issues within that building that can be, added into the existing infrastructure rather than tearing it all apart and trying to rebuild something from scratch. So like,
Excellent.
this is not specifically a material per se, but there are a lot of solutions out there. Yeah.
Excellent. Emmanuel, Imran, thank you so much for your wealth of information. You've been well received over here. We're very excited for both of your products, especially Emmanuel, especially yours. Like somebody's actually saying they want to see your project in real life. So I think we have to arrange for them to go to Nigeria to be able to see.
No, they'll be able to see it very soon in Ghana.
Very soon.
Ghana.
And to our participants, thank you so much for your amazing questions. I'm sure there's a representative for Echo House, and also I can see that Imran has also been sharing some information there, so you can find them. I'm sure the event organizers will also be sharing their contact details. I'd like to say thank you very much again to the organizers as well, because we are really a green Ghana. We want to see more green houses, green communities, green cities, green buildings, and we're always the black star in everything, and I'm sure we're going to be able to succeed with this one as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation, and have a fantastic day. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Nadia.